Thank you all for joining us today. I am here with Mike Martin, and like normal, we are going to talk about overcoming mental health and trauma and all of the both beautiful and sometimes not so beautiful things that can entail. How you doing today, Mike?
I'm tired, but good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am enjoying some nice weather and a nice full day of podcast recordings.
Very cool. I just got done with a bunch of meetings and classes. So now I get to sit back and just relax for a little bit.
It's those moments at the end of the day or between things where you can actually take a moment to just be present that really make it all worth it, isn't it?
It is, but that's kind of part of what I do. So I do that all the time anyway. But when you get the time to sit back and just be alone, especially for me, it seems to really recharge the batteries.
Right? Like for me, in the morning, with or without music in my headphones, I will sit on my porch and have several cups of coffee. And
I'm a coffee addict, so I can relate to that one.
like I'm very fortunate to have a beautiful view off my porch, but it feels like a retired old lady habit.
Sometimes those are the best, though, when you get in those little simple habits and structures of your life. It was really, I think, for me, that was what changed my whole outlook on life. Just getting back to the simple principles.
Right? Well, and for me, it was really about slowing down and learning that when you're tired, don't make a fresh pot of coffee. Maybe rest for half an hour. Maybe take a 20-minute coffee break. Don't just keep plugging along so that at the end of a 3-week period you sleep for 18 hours straight.
Yeah, yeah, I can understand that one. I mean, a lot of the time I'm on the trails anyway, so when I start to get tired out there, it's a signal to set up camp and hunker down for the night. But outside of teaching right now, enjoying a 0 day at home, and I almost forgot how good it feels to just kick back and put your feet up, grab a cup of coffee, and relax.
I definitely get that. What was the moment that really changed everything for you?
The very first night that I found myself homeless, sitting in my truck, looking in the rearview mirror, realizing that every aspect of the pattern of my life brought me to that moment because I repeated it over and over again and they didn't work.
That is definitely eye-opening. And not in a good way. But I mean it clearly brought you to the clarity that it helped you straighten yourself out.
Well, the clarity itself came, or at least started to build up about 2 weeks later. That was when I woke up from a botched suicide attempt in the woods and then stumbled my way back to the truck like nothing happened. And I turned on a hunting podcast, and the Stoic author Ryan Holiday happened to be on there, and he spit out a bunch of Marcus Aurelius quotes that changed my entire perception. I went from thinking I was terminal, and that was just, you know, my hand was going to be the end, to all of a sudden the adversities that I was facing were the opportunity to highlight and showcase who I am. And as a father, being able to show your kids a lesson like that by rebuilding, it goes beyond words.
Most definitely. Like, even myself with struggling, I mean, ragingly, with alcohol as a late teenager up until I was 20. It wasn't until I had published my first book and later that summer I started having these night terrors about the path I was headed down, where I
I,
woke up and I was like, nope, nope, this needs to change right now because I keep seeing my own death.
I can relate to all of that. The night terrors, kind of almost post-traumatic stress in a way, where you go try to go to sleep and your past would attack you and everything else. And you know, through those early days, even though I really didn't know where I was going of trying to recover and get myself back together, I remember picking up a book called The Wind Is My Mother, written by Bearhart. And there's a line in the very beginning of the book where he talks about this freedom that comes with death, even though, death, the word itself is scary and we all view it as like a finale. The reality of the matter is there's many different forms of death. You don't have to physically leave the body to let something go. And when you start to really understand that and hold that in your heart and your feelings and even meditating on it, you start to realize, man, I can make differences. I can make changes in my life. I'm not all these things that somebody labels me with, or these past wrong decisions that I made, or, bad choices or things that people have done to me. And it ties beautifully into one of my favorite Marcus Aurelius quotes, where, to put it in context, being the emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in his day, he was facing the Antonine Plague, constant war, backstabbing and everything else. And he sits down and he writes in his journal, it's so unfortunate that all this stuff has happened to me. And then the very next line, he stops and he corrects himself and he says, no, it's fortunate that all this has happened to me because only I can handle it in the way that I have, and only I can learn from it in order to basically further my life and be the person that I'm intended to be.
It exactly. I mean, people that know my full story will often like apologize or pity me for being a hemiplegic teenager that became legally blind. I
I
overcame
can relate.
I overcame the hemiplegia. I am still legally blind. And I live a very successful, happy life. And yet, all of those experiences that led to today not only make me a better person, because there's a lot more empathy, but it makes me a better service professional because when someone goes, I've experienced this or that or the other, and so I get it. Unfortunately, from firsthand experience, I get it.
Yeah, I can relate because it's not only was that beautifully said and, a beautiful journey within itself to celebrate, but I get the same thing a lot of the time when, because I share my story through a lot of my work. Storytelling is a huge aspect of it. And a lot of the time, I'll get somebody that comes up to me after the class and they'll say, I can't believe you went through that. I'm really sorry that you had to experience all that. And, the same reaction. It's no, there's no need to apologize. This is actually what's brought me here to be able to share a story with you, that whether you interpret it the way that I experienced it, or you draw on aspects of your life to find a different interpretation, it's going to be something that's going to help you. There's morals and lessons within that story that you can apply to your journey in order to carry yourself forward.
Exactly. And if in that moment I am deflecting, which, no, 60-40 chance, I will paraphrase my own quote in my second book and say, you can be anything you want in life. At one point I was a vegetable and now I'm a woman.
That's beautiful. That's beautifully said too.
And generally, when they realize that I just made a plegia joke, they're laughing out of their own discomfort. I'm like, honey, I was a paralyzed 16-year-old. I had to learn to make it funny. I was really angry at the world until I recovered.
I found along not only my journey, but in helping other people, that is like the secret sauce right there. That is one of the most important seeds to put in your garden, is to look at the situation unbiasedly. You can't change the outside factors. If you can learn to enjoy them and embrace them and say, in your case, yes, I'm a I can't move. I'm a vegetable, but I love being a vegetable, and it's an opportunity for me to discover a new way. And in my case, when this all began, I didn't want to be homeless. I was really down and, beating myself up over it. But to look back at it and take a couple of steps forward and say, in fact, the funny part of me saying it in this way is that I've learned to really embrace it because I love it. Even then it was hard, but I had to love it. And embracing it now, I made that jump from being homeless back into conventional ways of life. And I had rented a house with a couple of friends, and I was the primary rent payer and everything. However, I had access to the basement, was mine. It was my private space. I had a little 10 by 10 ice shanty that I set up in the garage. That's where I chose to live because it became more comfortable. And it was, embodying that whole concept of this is what life is. I love that this is what life is. And it's almost like it knocks down any roadblock that adversity could put in your way.
right? One of the most beneficial time frames for me was when I was semi off grid in a cabin on the side of a ski resort for 7 months. It was me. I had electricity, but I had no running water. I had to haul water, but it was just me and nature and my cat. I,
Sometimes getting back to that simple way of life, though, those simple fundamentals, it it frees you from everything else that would make that adversity sound so much louder in your ears too.
exactly. Like, not only did I have to straighten out my head and truly recenter, but it really made me laugh at every aspect of present day society in North America that people glorify. No, don't care about the money, don't care about the lavish things. I I just need peace.
Peace is one of the hardest things to define, though. That's why I feel like so many people in today's world are afraid to truly acknowledge and go after that. You know, we're brought up to be dependent on distractions. Distractions distort that vision of what your heart defines as peace. If you can take the time to simply step out into nature where those distractions are completely irrelevant, along with all of the judgments and stories that people project on each other, you are able to actually channel in and listen to your heart. One of the one of the most beautiful examples of that I've come across was the journey of the Lakota leader, Crazy Horse. Here he's in the midst of all of that turmoil of the old Indian wars and everything. And before he would lapse and jump to make a decision, he would at all costs retreat into solitude and step within himself and not look at the biasness that the wars and the propaganda had put in him. He would look at what was going to benefit the overall picture for his people. And I feel like that's when you go out and you commune alone in nature, that's what you're giving yourself the opportunity to do. Look within and commune and decide what the best direction is for you that leads to that happiness.
Exactly. And before I found my own peace, people would be concerned about my solitude and my silence due to mischief. Now they're concerned because they don't know if I'm writing a book, if I'm composing music, or if I'm just gonna pull like some publicity stunt. Like, guys, I'm busy writing books, leave me alone. I have to be in the quiet thinking place to be able to write thousands of words so that you guys can think that they're amazing.
That's the beauty of what we do, though, is we've always got somebody guessing at what we're doing. I do that same sort of thing. Like I'll kind of disappear and hit a trail when I've got time just by myself in order to center and bring everything together. And in reality, what looks like it could be I'm getting into my disconnect is me going out and channeling the next way that I can serve whoever may cross my path and to strengthen my heart and my soul to become that, I wouldn't say pillar, but that direction point.
right? Disconnecting from the world and everything around you to reconnect to yourself. And that's really it. That's even why I'm currently rehabbing my ankle so that I can get back on the trails running again.
There's a lot to be said for getting out on the trail, to be honest with you. But there's a lot that goes into it that a lot of people don't necessarily look at either, which it's got its good side, its upside. People are afraid of coming out because what if I get attacked by a bear? And all this, all the preconceived fears of coming out. I'm not gonna have a cell phone. I'm not gonna have this. I'm not gonna have that. That's the beauty of it.
Like that's the point.
Exactly. I mean, in all reality, the bear comment, bears aren't everywhere. And if you are afraid, and those are the kind of things that hold you back, but you want to do it, it's as simple as going outside your door, walking around a park, and then escalating to a metro park, moving up to a state park. It's a very easy activity to get into.
Right? Or, actually look into animal safety.
Yes,
Most bears make yourself big, make yourself loud, walk in the opposite direction. That bear's gonna leave. That is exempt of a grizzly. But like I don't understand all of this skittishness, but maybe that's also because I grew up in a small rural city where I was in kindergarten when someone from the conservatory came and gave us animal safety because you could be in the playground at school and see wildlife.
is it is it always though just the lack of knowledge, or is it perhaps a fear of sitting with yourself? And I bring that idea into the equation because I think back to my early relationship with outdoor activity. It was still caught in the mindset of we go out, we produce the results, we come back. That isolation aspect of sitting still in the woods, especially on a hunt, waiting for the animal to come in, man, that scared the hell out of me. I was definitely afraid to sit with myself. And then, further along the line, when I started to make connections along the course of this chapter in my life, I started to realize that that thing that I was always afraid of and seeking a distraction for was actually my greatest strength and my greatest ally. And that made sitting outside and embracing the isolation aspect of an outdoor adventure not only funner and more fulfilling, but it also made it more meaningful.
See, and I would say that it's 20% lack of knowledge, 80% fear of self. Because even myself, that when I was in active addiction, it was fear of self. And even parts of the healing journey where it was, no, I don't want to be alone because I don't trust myself. But then I got there. Now it's, I'm as social as I like to be, but people will admit it is hard to pull me out of solitude unless it's something I actually want to do.
See, I've got a big smile on my face right now because that's another thing I can really relate to because a lot of my struggles, I'm very introverted. And the trigger of the change in life really brought out this really severe form of social anxiety. within me. And I again attribute that to the trauma of the event. However, it's been a huge hurdle, and small confined spaces are more comfortable for me. They make me feel at peace and easy, unless I'm out in the wilderness where I'm surrounded by nothing but trees and animals and so on and so forth. But along the journey of trying to not only heal myself, but also play an active role in other people's journeys of the same magnitude, I've had to come out of my shell. I've had to somehow evolve, whether I wanted to or not, in a way that I could not only approach somebody to have a conversation, to open the door, to get the opportunity to do so, but present these things to somebody. And I feel like having almost a straightforward plan coupled with the backup plan and being able to transition back and forth between the two has helped me to develop that confidence. And that's something that whether it's, on a platform like this, or it's just a platform of, I really wish I could go out and actually interact with people, but I'm very scared to do so. We all have that within us. It's just a matter of utilizing the tools that are around us in order to get there.
Exactly. And especially the reintegration to society after trauma piece. Everyone thinks you go to counseling and or life coaching or whatever modality you choose and it's magically better. No. The holding your hand while reintegrating into life is the longest stage of this because you're gonna get bit or burned from time to time. You're gonna try and reintegrate, and there are going to be parts that are unsuccessful. I mean, my last big T trauma would be probably close to 4 years ago. I still, when I look at men face to face, if I don't know that man, there's a part of me that cringes in that, okay, is this about to happen again? But 99% of the time, completely fine.
See,
Because
I love that you.
I
Oh,
know
go ahead.
that most men are just teddy bears. They come off as aggressive because they're not good at communicating.
Well, yeah, I mean, over the course of my life, there's been a huge building of a vocabulary to be able to express those feelings and those thoughts and ideas. But I want to go back to something that you began with, because I think that was one of the most important things to touch on, is the fact that as you go through, recovery, or you go through healing and you put the time into it and the effort into it, so many of us think that when we go and we reach out to a professional to help us along, they're going to do the work. And it's not about them doing the work, it's about them turning you on to the tools and the assets that can help you in order to do that work. But along with that, you've also got to believe, you, in one way or another, you got to believe that the healing process that's going on, every step that you're taking, whether it's good or bad, is impacting it in some way, and it's going to help.
Trusting the process is so huge. Even in the portions of the journey where you're not seeing progress, like you have plateaued in a sense, you still have to believe, and in the end of the day, whether it's higher power, whether it's yourself, that for some reason it's going to work out.
You do. I don't think that we're actually destined to fail at any effort that we make. We just have to find waypoints along the way between where you start and where you want to end up, in order to keep yourself on track, and then believe that all those footsteps are going to lead you up that mountain to success. And we've also got to give ourselves credit and realize that, every step that we take, it is impactful. If you think about a, a hike or a journey, every one of those hikes or journeys begin with one step. It may be a 10-mile hike that you're setting out on, but those 10 miles aren't going to get covered without that first single step. And then believing that the momentum is going to carry you along the way.
right? Say, and you say 10 miles, and immediately my brain went to, damn, I miss a 5 mile run in the morning. And it just shows how much of an athlete I used to be. As it's no, but before vegetable, I also used to train it and compete in martial arts for 10 years. And now I live a very active life, but I'm not competing in sport. I'm what they call fully recovered and still recovering.
But
And
the
it pits
process never really ends, though, does it?
no, because week by week I look at my body and my physical health like the same holistic way that I look at mental health with my clients. No, what do I need to do this week to see the change that I want to see in X, Y, or Z? And then I modify the training plan. And most people would consider this highly neurotic. But when you were a hemiplegic, you have to be this level of neurotic to not like backslide too far.
Well, I think honestly, one of the biggest points of long, helping somebody with a mental health journey of any sort is a willingness to tailor your approach in a way that is going to be successful for that individual. There's no one size fits all. That's how we get these labels or these diagnoses that cause so many of us to give up. I remember back when I first took the initiative to get into talk therapy, the very first therapist that I talked to, and I was pretty excited about taking this step, but we talked for 50 minutes or whatever. And at the end of it, she told me that I had an illness. And my first thought was, and I expressed this to her, okay, great, I have an illness. Now what do I do? Do I sit on the couch and I wait for this thing to suck me alive and, take me out, or what do I do? Needless to say, that was the only session I had with her. And through the course of a couple of other therapists, I discovered one that was truly helpful for me. And it was all in the approach. Granted, has has the client at the time, I didn't understand necessarily the approach that she was taking with bringing up subjects such as meditation, which, being me, I had the stigmas around. And
Mhm.
so I actually went out and did and was like, okay, this makes sense now. But it's that willingness to work with somebody where they're at. You have to meet the individual. You can't bring the t-shirt to them and expect it to fit. You have to size them and then, bring your approach the right way.
Right? See, and with my background in high risk social work and my training as a medicine woman, when someone comes to me, they will often say, well, I have this diagnosis. And I often correct with, no, you have a soul wound and your symptoms present as, let's look at your symptoms. Let's look at what you went through. That didn't come out of thin air. It's not ingrained in who you are as a person. It's a label because westernized medicine and mental health is not kind to anyone that can't fit in the normal everyday box.
I love that approach and that aspect. I've always looked at it as these labels or these things that, professionals throw at us as more more or less just adversities. They're speed bumps along your journey. You can either stop at it and say, okay, this is my label, this is what I am, or you can figure out how to make that a part of your journey. The impediment always becomes the way, one way
right?
or the other. And as we really dial in on ourselves and start to explore our hearts, that's where that expression really, the rubber meets the road, comes from. Because, here I walk around every day, I could say I've got an illness. I got clinical depression. I've got some crazy, crazy social anxiety. But in reality, it's cool. Those are just parts of what I deal with around the color palette. I'm going to paint a picture and I'm going to go through because that's what my heart tells me. That purpose can still come out.
Right? Instead of your diagnoses, why don't you give me your adjectives instead?
Right. And it also, I feel like it makes the conversation a lot easier. It's a lot less bleak when you look at something and say, oh, well, I'm this or I'm that. Okay, great. Now they built walls around me. I can't go nowhere.
Right?
But it's, instead of using the word, I've got this, I've got that. Well, I feel this. I feel that. Okay, cool. We can explore that. We can see how we can take those things that people are perceiving as a weakness that you have, and we can turn them into your strength. We can turn them into things that are going to help you along.
Exactly. What's one piece of advice that you would offer your younger self?
Let's see, my younger self, I would have to say, considering that I always walk around feeling lost and without a purpose, there's a great quote from Daniel Boone that I really love and took to heart, is the fact that we're never lost. We may get turned around in the woods for 3, 5, 7 days, but we always find our way back. We always find our way back to the trail, the path that we're destined to walk. And if you learn to embrace those moments that you're lost as an opportunity to not only learn, but create, then they don't seem as bleak. You have a shelter that's pre-made that you can carry that keeps you dry in the middle of the rainstorms of life.
That's
And
really beautiful.
and most importantly, it gives you hope to never give up.
And honestly, like, that's one of the biggest pieces to just moving forward, whether you struggle with mental health or not. We all need hope.
Yes.
Where can our readers connect with you?
So I direct everybody to my base camp, which is projectmindfullyOutdoors.co. You can also find my podcast, which is under the same name, Project Mind for the Outdoors. And then on social media, I'm Mike Martin, or you can find Project Mind for the Outdoors. And I'd love to connect with you. If you want to if you want to connect with me directly, you can always email me, Mike Martin at projectmindfullyOutdoors.co.
Thank you so much for this incredible conversation today, Mike.
This has been a beautiful conversation. Thank you very much for the time, the conversation, and celebrating my journey with me.